So as we all know, D&D can be played perfectly fine with just a pencil and paper and your imagination. But there are tons and tons of products on the market today that are designed to enhance your D&D playing experience. And while some can detract from the experience, there are a large number that really can add value to you in your games. Today, I'm going to really try my best not to focus on obvious ones like a DM screen or miniatures to use at your game table, because I feel like a lot of us already know about these. But instead, I'm going to focus on products that I have discovered over the last 7 or so years that I have done playing D&D that actually add value to my experience in the game. Additionally, I'm going to be covering some products that you yourself can buy, but I can assure you that this video is not sponsored by anybody, and if something made this list, it's because I actually use it and think it's valuable to the D&D experience. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. When it comes to miniatures, it's always nice to have these 3D miniatures, whether you 3D printed them or got them from a company like Reaper or WizKids. However, if you don't want to spend a ton of money, you can focus on things like paper minis that you can create yourself, or these flat plastic minis that some companies are making. I'll send a link to the ones that I own, but there are multiple other companies like Skinny Minis that are making this sort of product. And I think it's really valuable to get a bunch of minis for a cheap price. Not only that, but it's super easy to store. Ever since I started printing 3D miniatures for Dungeons & Dragons, I have had a hard time figuring out where to put all of them. But when I bought this pack of minis, it was super easy to stick them into card sleeves and then throw them into a binder to wait for the next time that I am going to use them. So now, instead of taking up bins and bins on my shelf, it only takes up one binder-sized location. Next up is a product called Dungeon Craft. I discovered this product not too long ago, but ever since I started supporting them on Kickstarter, I have absolutely loved it. Something that I really like bringing to the D&D table is 3D terrain, and just like the 3D miniatures, what I quickly ran into is that they take up so much space on the shelf. However, Dungeon Craft, just like the flat minis, are designed to have a bunch of 3D terrain that you can throw on a battle map or just on the table to create a dungeon or an outdoor battlefield. Just like the minis, these are super affordable and don't take up a lot of space on your shelf. That is something I definitely look for, is a good cost to value ratio as well as how much space it takes up on your shelf. After kickstarting their first core set, they have since moved on to different themes that usually correspond with specific modules. For example, they released a set called Cursed Lands, which had all sorts of gothic horror terrain that would work perfect for Curse of Strahd. And they are moving their way through the books that are being released, so if you are running modules, this is especially perfect for you as well. This next one is for D&D players and DMs on the go. This is a hex chest from Elderwood Academy, as well as some small pebble metal dice. This is something that I bought when I was constantly going to and from school, where I would actually hold my D&D games. We would rent out a room at the college I was going to, and we would play D&D in there. And something that always bothered me was carrying around a whole bunch of books and dice trays and your dice containers. However, this little hex chest fits on your keychain and you can bring it wherever you want. And I found it really useful, and every time I brought it out, someone was like, "Are those little metal dice?" And they were so excited. It's a cool little peripheral if you have the money to spend. The next accessory that I use all the time is these little colored rings that really help in combat when you're tracking all sorts of different conditions, whether or not someone's concentrating, or if you just have multiple types of the same monster. A lot of times I find it can be a little confusing, especially if you have the same mini multiple times, to be like, okay, which skeleton just lost that hit points, and so on and so forth. But I printed out these cool, colorful rings where you just put them on top of the mini, and the player that is attacking them can say, okay, the red one is the one I am attacking. Or I, as a DM, can say, okay, can we move the blue one 30 feet towards Galthror, the barbarian, and then it's super easy and we have a nice shorthand language. Additionally, as a player, I use this little ring that says concentrating to remind me every time I go to move my mini that I am concentrating on a spell and I need to be looking out for those concentration saving throws. The best part about these rings is you don't have to buy them. There are some companies that make them, or you could 3D print them yourselves, but also milk tabs work perfectly. And if you only have a couple colors, you can easily paint them to suit a wide variety of colors and help facilitate your needs. Next up are these dice right here. They are called the Dice of Rolling, and I use them all the time. They are my exclusive set when I am DMing a game of Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Basically what they are is it is a ginormous set of dice. They have at least one of each type, but you'll notice most of them have multiple of each type. And the reason there are multiple of each type is because they went through the entire set of D&D 5e rules and made sure that you had to have enough dice for basically any situation. So as you would have 2 d20s for rolling with advantage and disadvantage, you also have 10 d6s for those fireballs and other nasty effects like sneak attack. These come super in handy, and I find that they actually help me speed up my games. Now when I crit, I don't have to be like, okay, does anyone have a couple more d8s? Because I have 5 ready to go. Additionally, they are super helpful when it comes to teaching new players the game because each different type of die is a different color. So instead of saying, okay, roll the d20 and then the player being like, which one is that? And it's like the one with 20 sides, which means nothing to them. I can say, pick up the blue one and roll it, and they totally know what that means, and they can start to get familiar with what a d20 looks like compared to a d6 or d4 or what have you. I really, really believe in this product, and I use it all the time. Next up are initiative tracker cards that go on your DM screen. Not only are these super easy to make by just folding a note card, but they're also super useful. It makes sure that the players on the player side can see whose turn is coming up and the turn order in general, but also you as the DM get the same information, but you can also write little notes like what a player's AC is or their passive perception. But the favorite part about them that I don't see a lot of people doing is putting on little tabs to track conditions and concentration. As a DM, it can be easy to forget to remind the players that they are concentrating on a spell and they need to make a Constitution saving throw. And even though that should be the player's job to keep track of it, we all know that players forget just as much. So having this little reminder on your initiative tracker is really, really helpful to ensure that you don't miss out on any important effects like a paralyzed or stun effect, or concentrating on a spell. The next one is actually a bit of a request. I use a table full of minis and terrain, and something that always gives me trouble is doing flight. I think I have looked through all sorts of 3D printed flight stands and available options on the market, but flight stands just don't really seem to work for me. So I'm curious what you guys do when your players or a baddie starts flying over top of the battlefield. How do you represent that? I'm really curious. Lastly, and one of my absolute favorites, is a dedicated equipment sheet. I think this is an invaluable resource because on the normal D&D 5e character sheet, there is just not enough space for your equipment. But having a dedicated sheet, just like your spell sheet, is really helpful to making sure that you are keeping track of your carrying capacity. Speaking of which, the one that I use and the one I'll link below actually calculates that for you. It shows you how to calculate that carrying capacity. And I would bet that most players don't actually track their equipment and carrying capacity. And I think that's because there is not a handy, organized sheet that's dedicated to it. So even if you don't use the one that I use, even going into Excel and doing a couple of commands to make sure that it automatically calculates the amount of pounds that you are carrying as compared to your carrying capacity, it could really, really help make sure that you don't forget this actually really important part of the game. Because if you're not tracking carrying capacity, then you are missing out on one of the main things that makes strength important. And we all know that strength needs all the help it can get. Speaking of which, we cover this equipment sheet as well as the initiative trackers in a little bit more detail in a collab video that we did with a D&D variety show with channel Don't Be Bored. I'll link the episode that we appear in the description down below if you want to head over there and show your love for Short Rest and what we're doing here. That being said, I made sure to only put things on this list that I actually use all the time. And I know I missed big, useful tools like spell cards and things of the like. So if there's something that you use all the time in your games, go ahead and leave a comment down below. Perhaps you can help someone discover something that's really going to help them in their games. But make sure that you don't actually post any links because YouTube automatically filters out a lot of that stuff and just deletes the comment without even asking us. So just talk about what you use, not necessarily link to the specific product. Otherwise, those are the peripherals that I use in my game. I know one of the best things about D&D for a lot of people are that it's just pen and paper, and that's all you really need other than dice and a couple of friends to play the game. But I think that these things can really help add value to your game, and I hope I was helpful in helping you wade through the less important accessories that you're coming across in your D&D adventuring career. Otherwise, you may have noticed that we got a green screen. This is something that we have been wanting for a long time, and it was only made possible as thanks to our patrons. So if you want to help continue to see our channel grow and have your hand in that, then please consider heading over to Patreon and supporting us. We have a couple of perks over there with ideas to grow even bigger. In celebration for this new update, I just wanted to say a big thanks to every single one of our patrons, not just the one in the shout out tier. So without further ado, I want to thank Lucas Hartso, Jer Clark, Painted Sky, Faizan Ahmad, and Robert Allen Klaus III. Thank you guys so much. Your support means the world to us. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and we hope to see you on your next Short Rest.